Hi, guys. I hope everybody's having a good night. I have a fly buzzing around, so just be prepared. I'm not having a stroke. I'm going to ninja and get this sucker eventually, but one does not start randomly swatting when you're sitting in a cubicle that is surrounded by knives and other keepsakes and precious mementos of your past. One does not start randomly destroying things. So I will wait. I will have my moment and I will get him eventually, or it, I should say. Hope y'all are having a good night. Brian, good evening. Well, talk about weird weather. Um, Everything today cooled down a little bit. Not bad, but it started out this morning in the low 60s, which is a change for the last 2 weeks. Choir boys, good evening, sir. Kodak, good evening. Or howdy, howdy. I understand howdy, howdy. Daryl, good evening. Earl, good evening from Syracuse. Hello, Miss Pam. Glad you made it. But I went out and spent the day today with Bear, and we shot some new footage to go onto his channel and old ways that I'll be posting this Sunday on my channel. And good evening, Justin and Worm Wrangler and Bob. Hello, Michael. Good evening from Tampa. I know exactly where Tampa's at. Been there more than once. Yeah, I'm gonna get you, you little sucker. He showed up when I walked through the door, that fly, and he'd been me, 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 me. Wear yourself out. Go right ahead. Blackie, good evening, Diane. And Blackie, real quick, I want to pick up a good compass for when I come to the gathering. Any ideas? Um, any of the basic compasses, the Sunto or any of them will work just fine. Just a basic map compass you're going to lay down with a clear plate on it. Any of those will work just fine. Bruins are good. You don't have to do a whole lot of money to do basic navigation. And we'll sit and we'll talk some about basic navigation when you get to the gathering, which, as Bear pointed out, the gathering is 2 weeks from now. So those are going to be coming, it's almost upon us. Ronald, good evening. Gordon, Bears always. Bears in the house, guys. Mr. Johnny, hello. Rhett, hello. 2020, good evening. CJ, good evening. Yeah, we went and we did some turkey scouting this morning. We were talking in old ways about, what was spring like. Well, spring was the time whenever you were thinking about turkeys, because in my part of the South, we don't have a fall turkey season. We got a spring turkey season. So if you're going to get a turkey for later on to have for Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving, you had to get it in the spring and put it in the freezer. It was also the time where we've been eating, we were poor. You'd been eating wild game quite a bit. And so you were about ready for something other than deer, possum, coon, etc. You had a lot of squirrel and rice. And so you were ready for some bass and catfish and things like that. And so it was a transitional time to change what we're filling up our freezers with and stuff. That was a big thing for us. Cheddar, successful first fire roll. Congrats. That is a very worthwhile skill, especially like split the log in half so you got your two rolling surfaces that kind of match up to begin with. And a little bit of ash and some sort of fluffy material. Now down here in my part of the South, we got cotton everywhere. Because cotton fields. So it is not uncommon to find just tufts of cotton in the woods where a bird to pick it up or whatever. I've seen nests that were made up of nothing but cotton tufts. So he can be picked up, and then any kind of ashes from a hardwood fire or something, you got stuff to roll and make with there. Chuck, good evening. Gordon, safe journey. Hope you get to see it later. Good night. James, good evening to South Carolina. Well, we're having quite a little bitty weather things, ain't we? Half the country is in snow and cold. California is getting buried. I think they can say their drought's going to take a hard hit, and they're getting even more rain and water now. And down here at the south, we've been real warm sometime. I was seeing a meteorological thing, and they were showing a view from space, and it's where they can, in the fall, where they can show you the bands of where the leaves are changing color. So when the color is in Maine or bright or whatever. Well, that reverse that, they show when things bloom. And they were showing the South is 30 days plus ahead of normal. Everything's green, everything's blooming. You would think it was May as opposed to being first week or so of March. And we've got some cold weather coming, but everything is just green. Days are in the 80s, nights are at 70. It's and everything's blooming. Pine pollen. Oh boy, I'm gonna include a picture whenever I do the old ways of I took a picture of the top of my truck. It is yellow. It looks like you've taken cornstarch and just covered the whole thing. That is nothing but pine pollen. It's that thick down here right now. So if you're not allergic, give it time. You will be. Mr. Kennedy, good evening. My call. Blackie, what is your favorite camping stove? If we're talking about a gas stove, it's a Coleman, 2-burner Coleman. Now, I've got a 1-burner and I've got my 2. I prefer my 2-burner if we're doing a base camp type deal. If we're talking about a stove to carry with you, I like a Trangia. Really like a Trangia. Light, efficient, plenty of heat. You can learn how to regulate it. Fuel is not that heavy and it's very available. So Trangia is my favorite stove. For if I had to pick one, it'd be the Trangia. Chuck, have a friend and a young buddy of his coming to the gathering. Cool. Look forward to seeing you. Lane White, hello. Edgar, Blackie, would you sleep in a green hammock way up in a big leafy tree if you were hiding? Actually, no. And I can see where that would have appeal at times because most people don't ever look up. But if anything does look up, you're kind of stuck because you can't get down quickly. And you can get down quickly, but get down gracefully is a thing. So getting up high in a tree is not an idea. Snipers did that a lot in the Civil War and even World War II. They get up on top of trees and then hide in the cover up there. But if you're picked out, there's nowhere to go. So no, I don't hide up there. Bushcraft with the Preacher, good evening. K-Town, good evening. I don't know. It's 7 o'clock here. It just has started. K-Town. Virginia Bushcrafter, hello. Washburn, good evening. Daryl, no snow in Pennsylvania. That's cool. Chris P, we're at least a month ahead. I mean, everything's blooming. We still have, it's a type of tree, and we call them Christmas berries. But it's got red berries on it, green leaves and red berries, and around Christmas times when it blooms, it produces those berries. And we always call it Christmas bush because it's always somewhere around it. And in Bear's Yard, you had a Christmas bush surrounded by leafy greens and little blue buttercup-like flowers everywhere. These two are normally not even anywhere close to each other, and yet here they're at the same time in the same place. Richard, I was wondering where you got your hat. Boy Scouts. It is a Boy Scouts Explorers Scoutmaster hat. It's a crushable felt hat. I've got a pair of them. This one that I've worn, and this one I've had for 30 years. And then I have my other one, which is identical. I bought 2 of them, and it's still up in the closet. When this one dies, I'll bring that one out. Hopefully it'll last the rest of my life. Good evening, Garen. Hiram, good evening. Josh, how's your Blackbird? Fantastic. Doing really good. And I've now got the Nighthawk, finally got mine, knapsack, and I will be posting a video on that very soon talking about it. Pam, I have a conversion kit for liquid to gas for a 2-burner. Great when you've got a large. Going to be cooking for a while. Great accessory. Good evening, Justin. Daryl, flippy loading ram on a walker. The latch, the little lollipop that sticks down the spring, is kind of rounded. The part that it locks into in the loading lever, get on top of that spring, that lollipop right there, take a file and kind of square it off. Now be careful. Don't go too far. It'll snap. But just kind of take it from being round and put like a square shelf in there, and it will then lock into the loading lever much better. Now to open up the loading lever, you need to grab a hold of it and grab the end of that spring with your thumbnail and pull it just a touch, and it'll unlock. Excuse me. I did my friend Jason's that way, where I had it and I went to try to file out and his spring snapped. So I ordered a new replacement spring. I squared it up like I'm talking about, put it on it. Now when you put his loading lever up and it clicks, you can't just grab it and pull it because the spring won't pop out of the way. But I can grab a hold and take my thumb down and grab it, and it'll unlock, and then you can run it like normal. But that's what I do with all the walkers I get a hold of. Brad, hello to North Alabama. Uncle Crow, good evening. K-Town getting a 3-burner Coleman off Marketplace. 3-burners are big camp stoves. They work great. They're especially great if you're going to be running a oven that you're going to sit up there and have to bake for a while. A 3-burner is great because you still do a lot of cooking and still be baking at the same time. Mike Simmons, good evening. Check this out. Do you use K-bar much? I used K-bars for years. For like 2 or 3 years, that was my beginning. That was my very first really good bushcraft knife. So I've got a lot of experience with a K-bar. I don't use it right now, but I have used K-bar a lot. Oh, y'all are doing good. Let me see him read real fast. Sackett, what is the best way to find sassafras and identify? Sassafras is going to have the 3 different kind of leaves on one bush, on one tree. The mitten, the V, and the round. And so do any kind of search and look at it and look at the leaves. And once you figure it, it'll all be on the same bush. And you see the 3 kind of leaves on one bush, that's sassafras. Because everything else will be the same leaf. Minor variation, but this is 3 radical different shapes of leaves on one bush. Edgar, can the hat hold water if you flip it upside down? It did originally. There's 2 little holes up here at the top. And then I got 3 vent holes in the side. But yeah, you could water something with it. You could dip water with it if you needed to. And I have before. I bailed water with it out of a canoe before. So. Lewis Ward, good evening. Virginia Bushcrafter, good evening. Enu moving to the country in April. We'll have a couple of acres in the middle of nowhere. Congrats. Hope it works out well for you. Justin Coon, hello, sir. K-Town, you got 2 of those stoves. Those are good stoves. And you should get quite a bit of use out of them. Buck 112, good evening. Hush. I'll eat later. Paul Blackie, are you going to the folk skills course? Me and Trinity had said that we were going to do that. However, Trinity's situation has changed and she's not going to be able to go. And I was really going to be with her, like be her ranger buddy and go with her. So no, I guess I will not be coming to it. But we are tentatively talking about going to the Pathfinder gathering. We shall see. You know, if she wants to go up there and set up like we did the last time and me be the barker in her stall, I'll be happy to go up there. But at this moment, I'm not planning on going to the skills course because the reason I was going with her. So, fly. Ooh, I'm going to swat you. I'm going to get you. Ryan, hello to Oklahoma. Daryl, Walker latch. Yeah, the loading lever. There's a spring that locks into a notch in the loading lever. We call it the latch. It's what holds it up. Where the other ones is out here on the end of the loading lever, later models, but on the Walker, it was further back here. When you look at the Walker and really kind of pull your eyes back and look at it, you're going to realize what it is. If you go look at the Patterson revolving rifle, that had a loading lever like that. But a rifle, when it fired, there wasn't enough recoil to make the loading lever drop. And it's like you took a full-size shotgun and chopped the stock off and make a pistol grip shotgun. That's kind of the idea that they kind of went with, to have that powerful a gun in that short a length. And so he put that loading lever, like had been on the Patterson rifles, onto the Walker. And it just didn't work out. They changed it, and the very first incarnation of the Dragoon had moved the latch to the end of it to keep it from falling down. So, Washburn, Blackie, do you have any first aid videos? I do not. At one time, I was certified in a lot of that stuff, but I have not focused on that. There are a lot of guys out there that do, a lot of EMTs and stuff that do advanced Boy Scout stuff. And I tell people that if you're wanting to learn and you have very limited knowledge, get the Boy Scout first aid merit badge. It's plain English, and it's meant for people that have little or no experience, because they're teaching kids. But with this, you have a real good working knowledge of how to help and do stuff, and it will give you a basis to move on to more advanced stuff. I've seen a lot of first aid books. You pick it up and go to reading it, and they're assuming that you're an EMT or something, or that you've got experience. They're trying to use big words, instead of just saying, stop the victim from choking, do this. They have to, if the esophagus windpipe is blocked, beyond so many millimeters of da-da-da. Just, I'm not here to become a doctor. I'm here to help somebody. The Boy Scout manual, and then go to I think the Red Cross has a first aid manual. And I think even FEMA has a first aid manual. So there's several of them available that are free of charge. I think you can download them, and will give you a good basis to begin with. Lane White, thoughts on the British military smock jacket? Very good jacket, especially ones that are the Gore-Tex or the windproof. I had a British, I think I still have in the closet over there, a British smock jacket, and I like them. I just love my M65 field jacket more, but it was a good jacket, and it was really well made for its environment of that blowing wind and cold stuff. It really works. K-Town, Blackie, what's your favorite top 5 knots to know? My favorites are the Siberian slippery for tying around anything, and slippery sheep bend for tying 2 ropes together. Top 5 knots. I use timber hitches for attaching under load that I can drop off very quickly. I use trucker's hitches for attaching any kind of tension line that requires a great deal of tension. I use Prusik knots for putting onto ropes and things for pulling and etc. I also do square knots a lot for a lot of the various ones. And then a knot that, a nail knot, like you learn to tie in fishing. That's a very good knot to attach just about anything to around whatever. So I can attach lines that way, putting a nail knot on this side, a nail knot on that side, and pull it. I can hook to something round. I can hook to something square. I can hook to whatever. So usually with that handful, I can do just about anything I need to do. And then I do a lot of knots that don't have any name to it. I just know how to do it. Roll it around, I do it. I was taught to do it and never really took the time to look it up and ask what's the knot called. CJ, on the hat video, you mentioned contacting the manufacturer. How'd that turn out? I think a Blackbird hat would be a good product for you, the Blackbird Brigade. I had found a manufacturer that had originally manufactured this hat, and I had contacted them and started talking to them, and they were not producing this hat at that time, but they still had the ability to produce it. And so we were kind of in talks about doing a run whenever COVID hit. And from what I understand now, the company's gone out of business. So I got to start over. But as far as I know, Boy Scouts may have had somebody else produce them since then. But I had been told not that long ago that somebody said they had gone through the Scout Hut and got one of these hats. So it's a crushable felt. And the shape of it is basically like we called it a Confederate slouch hat when I was young. But it's a type of slouch hat. And how would you spell slouch? Sloughh, I think, is the way it actually goes. K-Town, one knot to rule them all. Ooh. Depending on what we're doing. There is no perfect knot. There are knots that I can put together that will hold for strength, but then you can't get it in and out for doodly. And then there are a lot of knots that do a more than adequate job, but you can't put too much load on them. They'll untie. So that's one of them things where I don't think there is a one knot, just like there is not one knife. But with just a handful of knots that you know how to do, you can handle 90% of what you need to do. Benton, good evening. Have any thoughts on shotgun inserts? Yes, I have the 9mm and the 38 that I got from Short Lane Arms and fits into my H&R 20 gauge. And I really like mine. Mine are more than accurate enough for what I intend to do. And I've done video of me shooting the fallen plates at 30, 40 yards with it. And been able to stay with some degree of regularity under a 2-liter bottle out to 50 yards. And that's more than adequate for hunting for small game with that, like rabbits and stuff like that. Because I'm not trying to shoot a itty bitty squirrel with that. I'm trying to shoot something big enough for a meal, like a big coon, a big rabbit, 5, 10, 15 pound range. And so usually the bigger it is, the farther away you can be when you shoot it, because it's a bigger target and you don't have to get so close. And the smaller it is, the closer you can get before it really feels afraid and gets away from you. So there's a break point there. But the chamber inserts are very worthwhile to have. And plus it opens up possibility of other calibers. And Iraqi Veteran 8888, they showed the demonstration of, they were showing it as a negative to show you don't do this, but they took a single shot, cheap, damaged actually, 410 shotgun with a full choke, and went to showing all the calibers you could stick in it and it would go bang. And they were putting 30-30s, they were putting 44 Magnum, 45 Colt, 454 Casull. There were like 30 different calibers would drop into a 410 insert, actually into a 410 chamber, and fire. So the idea of having a 410 insert for world has got really, really bad to be able to put into a 12 gauge or whatever. Think of all the stuff you could drop in. No, it would never be a perfect idea, and it would never be, but it is what it is, and it's what we got to work with. And so being able to pick up ammunition of up to 37 calibers, like 30-30s and everything else, and be able to drop it in and make it go bang and be accurate enough at 0 to 25 yards to be able to take something with it. It might be worth it to look at. Flash, where are you at? I'm in Lower Alabama. Geico, good evening. Or is it Gecko? Or Geico? 1975, good evening. Washburn Billy, thanks for sharing. Yeah, bowline, great hitch, timber hitch, yeah. Will, good evening. Slouch, correct. Thank you, Lewis. Good evening, Flash. Flash in the pan. Flintlock, got you. Edgar, yeah, you can use that. You can use toggles to bind and make it keep things from getting too tight where you got a workout pin, etc. Especially when you're trying to improvise and pull a heavy load of some kind. Like you've got this fairly strong. Okay, here's a challenge for you. You have 200 feet of mule tape and your truck's stuck and another guy's willing to pull, but he doesn't have anything to hook with. So you're going to take that and hook to your truck and then go hook to his. what knot can you utilize that you're going to be able to get back out when you're done? Because think how tight that's going to pull. Yeah, it could probably pull it out. Let's say it's going to have 1,800-pound breaking strength. You're going to use 1,000 pounds of it. But you put 1,000 pounds on that knot. What knot are you going to use that you can untie when you get done and not have to sacrifice this thing because once I tighten it, pulls that tight. I got to cut it. I can't untie it. That's one of those things. Being able to put something in like that, like a fail-safe pin. I've done that when I was doing heavy lifting, putting towers up and stuff when I was working for the military contractor. And we're trying to lift a 15-ton derrick up. And the guy operator didn't know what he was doing. He's looking at me, so we did the best we could with what we had. Kodak, yeah, Iraqi veterans were back in the day. Josh, I have thought about it, and in fact, I was invited to it, and I just I got my thing coming up, and I just don't have the time. It was supposed to be this weekend that I was asked to come up there to something to event or some sort of thing they're holding on up. I don't know if it's this weekend, but I know it was on the 10th, and when I found out about it, it was like the 3rd. And so there's no way I could work that out. I've got so many irons in the fire right now getting ready for my gathering. I just don't have the time to take off and be gone for several days. Will Ames, yes, the Swiss Army knife corkscrew does work as a Marlin spike. I can attest to that. Jeff, good evening. Rick the Red, hello there. Worm Wrangler, is there a conditioner preserved the polyester back straps that are deteriorating? A lot of times that's UV has deteriorated it. I believe there is such a stuff. If you have a local place that does tarpoliums, the big tarpoliums, contact them because I know that there is some sort of UV stabilizer that they put onto nylon and such tarps and tarpaulin stuff like that. There's those nylon awnings and things like that to keep them from deteriorating the same way. And so you could probably get with them. They may have something like that, but it will act basically like a sunblock and keep them from deteriorating any further until the treatment wears off, which is usually 6 months to a year of use. So if it's a pack strap that's not getting that much use, you might get a couple of years out of it. Just best I can tell you. My call. I have heard several people say it's real hot and cold. You'll hit it, and man, they're just jumping out of the boat fishing, and the brim and stuff just hitting like crazy. And then 10 minutes later, poof, nothing. So we've not hit that magic moment. The water's still too cool, but the air temperature's come up. So once that surface temperature of the water comes up, fish, I think, will just be exploding again. I'm planning on fishing at my gathering. Kenneth, Blakey, how many tomato plants do you put in a 5-gallon bucket, and how much soil do you put into each bucket? I will put some sort of roughage in the bottom of the bucket. Usually I get peat moss and mix it with that, like the red shavings. It's not cedar, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a black version of it, just crushed up black wood, and there's a red version of it. Okay. I'll take some of that and I'll put like almost not quite a third. Divide the bucket into fours, we'll say. 1/4 of the bottom of the bucket with drainage, of course, will have that. That makes sure I get good drainage. Then I will put my potting soil in 2/3. That leaves 1/3 from the top. Then I will sit my plant down there and bury it up to whatever the depth is supposed to be on the plants. The tomato plants are supposed to plant 2/3 of the plant in the ground. So you got all these nice things right now that's already limbs. Bury them. Those become roots. Leave only the top third of that plant sticking up out of the dirt, and they take off. It makes a bigger root system and it goes. And so that's what I do with mine. And it does make a difference. They will grow very quickly that way. Flash in the pan, got you. Herbert and Oakley in Oxford, North Carolina, wintering back and forth. You right at that break point, guys. Up there in the Carolinas, where you're gonna get that cold blowing across the top and the southern warmth coming up. You are at that thing. You might have it in one day where it'd be hot and cold in one day. Oh yeah, one tomato plant per bucket. Thank you for correcting me. Didn't never say that because it's going to grow and grow bigger. You can put like the small cherry tomatoes, 2 in a bucket. If you got regular size bucket, I've done that before and just space them apart because the plants don't get that big. But like a single tomato plant, 1 bucket per. Josh, what is your gathering date be coming this year? It will be on March 23rd through the 26th of this month at Geneva State Forest Lake. Geneva State Forest is the largest forest in the state of Alabama. It is right next to Conecuh National Forest. Just they crossed the line and called it the state forest. And it will be at Geneva State Forest Lake, same place it's always been at. And I will post this coming week my drive-in video from like a year ago of showing you how to come off the road and get to it. It's real simple. Come off the paved road. Don't make any turns until you get to this point, and then you turn, go up the hill and down to the lake. That's it. Be a lot of roads coming in, but just do that and you're fine. You know, enjoyed the quick deploy series, brought me back. Yeah, I've had a lot of people that have pointed that out. I've had a couple of guys that were in special forces have contacted me and said, you know, I've never seen anybody talk about that, and we use that when we were in such and such and etc. Quick deploys. So just something to get you through in a hurry and don't make a lot of muss and fuss. Jeff, sorry to hear that, but there'll be more of them. I'll have one next year. As far as the gathering, I'm sorry. Yeah, Bear pointed out that sassafras tree, you take the leaves and they were dehydrated and ground up, and that's what you made filet. That filet gumbo, it's a thickener. And so the leaves would be cleaned, dried, and then ground up into a powder, and that's what you'd put into soups and stews to thicken it up. And they got it from the Choctaw Indians. Or was it the Chickasaw? Chickasaw Indians. And so you hear filet gumbo, that's what it is. Justin, do I plant taters in buckets? I have not in many, many years. And I thought about it this year, but I haven't yet. I'm still every year I'm expanding my garden. And I'm up to 8 buckets and a big old wash tub. The wash tub's got squash and lettuce in it and a type of snap pea in it. The lettuce will be harvested first. The squash will take over everything. The snap pea will fight its way through. So that's the idea. Oh, I get you. Mike Simmons, this weekend is demo days for vendors. The Bushcraft Spring Gathering is okay. I got a request from somebody wanted me to come to it, invite me specifically. And I was wondering because I didn't think it was right then, but I was wondering why they wanted me there. So, not that I got anything against it, just, you know, like I said, I got conflicting interests. I got to take care of my people when I get my event going. Shore Sharp. I tried growing tomatoes upside down in the topsy tomato planter, that upside down bag thing, and couldn't get any tomatoes but a bunch of branches. Tomato plants want to produce vine. They want to run. So you got to pinch them off short, get a pretty good size thing, and you pinch off the runners, trapping it so if it can't grow out, it produces fruit. It's a balancing act. It's kind of like a bonsai tree. When you know what you're doing, you can kind of dial it in, but it is kind of finicky. And I've known people. I had a lady that worked with me years ago. She hung up one of them things and ended up being like 8 feet of tomato vines and not a single tomato plant, not a single tomato on it. It just kept growing, and it was a long thing, and she never had any because she didn't ever pinch them. They just kept going. Josh, Lindsay, driving down here is about 6 hours. I got friends up there in the Huntsville area, so it's about 6 hours. Washburn, Blackie, how about making water safe to drink? That's going to be important in the coming months. My number one choice, if I have no way of getting as naturally clean water as I can, is to boil it because that kills everything. After that, mechanical filters. I carry a Grail. Yes, they're expensive. And I pre-filter to keep that filter from getting clogged up easily. But that filter will filter thousands and thousands of gallons. And if you're going to use something, here's an old trick. If you go get one of the Brita pitcher filters, it will drop into I want to say it's either 2 or a 1 3/4 inch piece of PVC pipe, like it was made for it. Okay. You get like a 1 3/4 PVC to 2-inch connector. So it necks down, right? You drop your filter in the top, boom, and you sit the thing and you pour water into the top, and you've got a portable filter that will filter water pretty effectively. Other than that, it's using sand, charcoal, vegetable matter to filter it. That's a time-consuming thing, and it's worth just setting up a trash can, layering it up where you put the water in the top and the water comes out the bottom, and even then boil it, because you will filter out anything in the water, but anything that may have been alive, made it through the boiling, will guarantee kill it. Or put it in a clear glass jug and set it in 8 hours of sunlight and something about a gallon jug, and that'll kill it as well, because it can't survive in the UV. They got nothing to hide under, so that'll clean it out as well. Yep, Daryl. St. Patrick's Day, plant peas. Yeah, the peas I've got stuck in there in my wash tub is an old derelict wash tub. The bottom is no good anymore, so I just drill more holes and put it into a garden like thing. And I put 6 lettuce plants around. It's a tall, quick growing romaine lettuce. And then kind of off to the side of the center, I put this squash. Now we know that squash is going to grow like crazy and going to take over everything. But the lettuce is going to mature in about 45 days. And so I'll harvest the lettuce and they'll be gone. You get one harvest out of them, that's it. And then I will cut them off, take the stub, put toothpicks on it, put it into water, get them to reroot and replant that, and maybe get a second run out of them. But everything else, that thing, I want to put a grate right there beside a piece of chicken wire on a thing and let them growing peas go up into that chicken wire, and I'll be able to harvest from both sides of that chicken wire. And so it can just grow and produce all it wants. And I did first year I've done these particular type of peas. I want to see how they do, but we shall see. I'm still a rank amateur. I know enough to feed myself. That's it. Bushcraft with the Preacher. Blackie, what do you know about the American Mountain Men Living History Group? It's an organization that I know that Hawk Brome was part of, and I knew quite a few people in it. And it's a very good organization. It was dedicated back in the day. I don't know currently, because my knowledge of it is old, guys. I kind of got out of living history about 20 years ago now. But it was a very good organization that took the skills and stuff, the skills and accoutrements, production, independent thought, the ability to think on your feet. Very respectful. And I was very, very pleased for the ones that I knew that were members of that group. So, yeah, good group. Really good group. Jeff Conley, my wife planted small red potatoes in a bucket. I was shocked how many. We used to take a trash can. We get a plastic trash can, like one of them tall kitchen plastic trash cans, and set it up and put those red potatoes in it. And we had a place where it was getting water. It did everything it needed. And when you'd bust them things open, it was amazing how many potatoes. You know, how can you have 50 pounds of dirt in this tall trash can and get 45 pounds of potatoes out of it? It's like it went up in weight just sitting there. And but you'd bust up take and cut, just tear open the trash can and dig them out. And it was amazing how much they could produce. When you did everything right, we were using stuff from the worm bed that we had. When we'd get old stuff out of the worm bed, it would recycle into the potato. And so that was part of the fueling and feeding for the potato plants to produce. Chuck Miller, I have a friend in Winnipeg. He plants in old tires due to weather. Put one down, add soil, potato pieces. Yeah, I've seen that done. I've seen tractor tires done that way, especially stack up 3 or 4 tires. And they're going to recycle them. You know, you take car tires and stack them up and fill it full, and etc. And it's protected and it grows, and then you start peeling and digging and recycle them. I've seen that done several times. I never had anybody say they got sick. You know, I've had people say, well, you know, petroleum-based rubber that is the tire, that didn't that leach into it. But actually, I don't think it does that much because of the design and the way that the tires act like water reservoirs that capture water and feed it back into the soil. And instead of it being like above leaching in, it's kind of leaching down the side. And just, I never heard of anybody getting sick from it. Washburn, I have a Berkeley, but I just wanted more options. The bottom line is a filtration of some kind, sand, whatever. But the modern stuff is very, very good. And life straws and stuff like that, a lot of times you can pick them up cheap on sale. And the water pitcher filters, like the ones you lock in and stuff, always when you hear about they're discontinuing, start looking. Because a lot of times, you know, they discontinued, and that filter, which is still a perfectly viable filter, never been out of the package, and they don't fit whatever now, and they're discounting them out. When I was at Walmart, I remember they discontinued, this has been 10, 12 years ago, but they discontinued a pitcher design, whatever. And that filter that went into it, they weren't going to be carrying anymore. And they were dropped down to 25 cents per, and each one of those would filter 50 gallons. So, yeah. And plus the activated charcoal you get in the pet section for filtering for a fish aquarium. Pretty good stuff too. Boy, I'm burping that. I'm sorry, guys. Jonathan, Blackie, do you have any experience with the teeny tiny marbles hatchet? I do. That little small, like a Mount Meigs hatchet. Makes a great little hatchet to add in for kindling and carving and just hogging off a little of that extra when you're doing spoon carving and stuff. And will handle a lot of the little camp chores for making firewood and stuff. Some people, it's just easier to work with the weight forward of a small hatchet than it is a big knife or even a kukri. And so it's not a bad choice. I've got one up here hanging up in my collection right over there. I've got one of them little small, you know, wood handle, small marbles camp hatchets. And then I've got a bigger camp hatchet that's a bigger name. And then I've got axes and stuff. So just, yeah, they work well. You know, don't try to chop down a sequoia with it. But at the same time, it works, especially what you're doing around a campfire. You just want to split a little, especially if you go ahead and make you a wedge so that I can take it and go whop and split it open while it's starting, and then put that wedge in that slot, pull the hatchet out and go bang, 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 and split it on with the wedge. You can split big wood with that little bitty hatchet as long as you use a wedge and you use the hatchet to start the cut, and then you transfer over and use the wooden wedge to do it. Bobby, hello there from the low country, Louisiana. Bear, K-Town's telling you got to do a cannon video. I done told you we got to do that. I'm gonna play cameraman, and you're gonna walk us through a cannon video. Videos of SCP. What was your first hatchet ever? A shingling hatchet that I found up under the house when I was a boy. Didn't have a handle on it, and I believe it had been used in the construction of the house and probably just got lost. And obviously the head had broke off, you know, and I managed to, with my grandfather's help, put a handle in it. And that was my very first hatchet. It was a lousy hatchet, but it was my very first one. And I traded it off at some point later on. But hatchets, kukris, you know, etc. I've had big name tools like that, and I've had dime store, you know, God, who made this? Stay away from that one like you see at Walmart. That's the metal tube handle and the head. They call it a camping hatchet. It's junk because when you dent it, and you eventually will, that tube handle collapses, and then there's no way to put another handle on it. So if it's got a wooden handle on it, at least you got something to work with. But that was my very first hatchet. Jeff Conley, is the Marbles hatchet similar to what Kephart used? Yes, it really is. Especially that little double head is very, very similar. And what I would say, I would probably argue that the steel quality is about the same, because at the time of Nesmunk, that was a surgical tool, what we would pay premium for. But today, the run-of-the-mill steel is really better than the steel they had back then. And so what Nesmunk was going for is one side was a very thin, sharp edge, and that was his cutting edge, where I needed to carve or whatever, split very fine. The other side was a little more robust, and we call it a grubbing edge, and it was for splitting wood. He was just splitting little small kindling for his fire. He wasn't doing any house building, but he was chopping down small saplings, 2, 3, 4 inches at the most, and then turn the hatchet sideways and use it to tap tacks in, because all his tent was shirt weight material that he would nail with big-headed tacks, like we'd think like a thumbtack, to a wooden frame that he'd construct. And then when he got done, he'd just take the tip of his knife or the tip of the hatchet and pull the tacks back out and roll back up his shirt material, and that's what he moved his tent. So, yeah, they are very close. Jay's Life, hello to Texas. Hey, K-Town, Fiskars, are not expensive, but, I used a Fiskar saw for a long time. No, it is not the quality of those other things, but the price ain't that either. But at least it's a decent and within reason, especially over what you find in the camping section of the big box stores. Yeah, it's a distinct improvement. But it will teach you, and especially when you've got somebody that hasn't got a lot of experience yet, it's a great way for them to learn, because they're going to make mistakes. And I would rather you bust a $12 hatchet than bust a $200 custom made thing. It's just, you're going to have a learning curve. And I'd rather you learn with the cheap stuff, because once you've bought 4 or 5 of them, over time, because you keep busting the handle out, you'll get accurate. You'll get tired of buying them things. And so you'll start getting accurate. Washburn, tool is a tool and you get what you pay for. Absolutely. Within reason. I have seen, is this $400 tool, does it have $400 better than this $100 thing? Some ways yes, some ways no. It's what's the job, what's the skill level, and what's my needs. I don't automatically equate high price with high usage. In fact, a lot of times I kind of shy away from it because of the fact that that's a $400 whatever. If I drop or lose that, I don't want to have to go. And this is coming from somebody that carries custom knives, but I do so much with my knives, it's worth the investment to me. Having said that, though, if I dropped it over the side of a canoe, I'm going diving. I am not leaving that sucker on the bottom. I'm sorry. If there's a big gator or whatever, we're just going to have to dance, because I'm not leaving my knife. I'm going after that puppy. Michael Wolf, hello. K-Town, correct. Buy once, cry once. Once you get the skills and you feel confident that you need this better tool, yeah, find the best quality you can afford, get it. It's going to hurt, pay for it, but then you respect it because you know what it costs and you've got the skills to be using it correctly. Then enjoy it. Daryl, first hatchet was from S&H Green Stamp. Yep. I remember filling out them little green stamp books. Mom would hand me the things and I'd be sitting in the back seat on the way home filling up her books because she wanted a casserole dish or whatever. It was nothing, anything cool that I wanted, I noticed. Elvin, good evening. Videos of what was your riskiest trip ever? Going into the Delta north of Mobile with me and Grouch McGowan. Big gators, big snakes, and we brought a dog. That's a big no-no. Gators will go after a dog like it's a tidbit. And it was a basset. And her name was dadgummit, Biscuit. And we went in there and we were always in a very narrow, tight space. And you're in a tidal area where the bank at low tide, it's 12 foot up. And it's this old black Delta mud. You can't climb it. And you're in here and you come around a bend and there's just 4 or 5 big gators. And you're in a canoe, and if it goes bad, there ain't nobody coming to get you. That was probably our riskiest event that we did in that, because if it'd gone bad, somebody would have stumbled upon the remains of the canoes, I guess. But we saw 40 or 50 gators over 10, 12 feet. And I don't mean over yonder. I mean like right there. When we came around the bend, there was this big oak tree had fallen off the bank and it plugged up. And we're talking this whole area, we're in this creek hole. And it's just, for those of you who don't know, it's a big tidal swamp area just north of Mobile where the Alabama and Mobile River come in, and it's where the bay pushes back up in there. And so it's thick trees. Think of just jungle. And steep banks where at high tide, you're within like 6 feet or 5 feet of the top. And at low tide, you're 8 or 10 feet down. And it's just black, soupy, stinking mud and snakes and gators and everything else in there. And when we came around that bend and that tree had fallen in there, and Francis didn't even blink. He just rammed the front of the canoe up in it, went climbing up there. And he's standing on a limb in the water where his feet are in the water, taking his kukri and hacking a hole through this big old oak tree. so we can get through. And I backed my canoe up, to kind of give him room. And when the water cleared, because we had disturbed it coming in, it was like there's a cloud ahead of us because it was flowing from us in here. And it cleared up, and we had 3 or 4 big gators. And one of them had come up and was nosed up, and like his feet are here, and that gator was here. There's about a 3-inch diameter limb he's standing on. And there it is. And that gator was sitting there looking at him head on in a strike configuration. And I grabbed his attention. I said, you got a girlfriend? And he looked down at that big gator and said, oh, she just wants to suck on my toes. And he kept going. Force Recon Marine, in his 70s. And yeah, that was our riskiest trip. I look back now going like, God, if it had to go right, because if there was any wrong, it'd be just. See, look, when can we expect to find Remington caps and CB pistols? Every day things are getting a little bit better. Remington has really got back online and started catching back up. And I'm hoping by summertime they should pop back up for sale. But as you know, Remington Manufacturing of Ammunition, which is actually a company that's doing it under their name. Like Winchester is actually the Olin Corporation. I don't care whose name's on ammunition boxes, there's only 11 factories. And Remington kind of dropped out. And so now they're coming back, and percussion caps, which were under Remington, which is the same as primer caps, basically the same places that make standard primers to go into modern ammunition, or who make primers. And so now they're getting caught up. I'm seeing little hints in the industry that probably about June, we should start seeing percussion caps of the Remington types, like the 10s and 11s, showing back up. I hope so. And believe me, I will be doing bulk buys when they show back up. Jeff Conley, I'm still using the old East Wing hatchet. My dad, the East Wing were good hatchets. That metal handle, as long as it's maintained and done well, fantastic. Great sportsmen. It's just if it ever gets bent, you'll never get it straight again. Don't use it to pry the truck up out of the mud or to horse on it trying to split a stump. And that's what I would always see them, that somebody did something dumb. But as long as you use it for its intended tool, they will last a long time and be very, very good tools. See, look, how big was Sir Francis' box full of sand? I would say it would be about 18 inches square by about 12 inches deep. If you took a 1x12, okay, and made a box out of 1x12 with a board on them, 2 boards on the bottom and that, and made the depth of the sand about 4 inches deep, you could build a fire on that. And that's what he did. And then he had on the corners of the box, he had rods that could come out, like not really a grate, but someplace to sit a coffee pot on, where you could just roll them out of the way and dump wood in and roll them back. And they were just like a L that stuck into the wood, and you turned it around so you had the points. I think they were made out of rebar. But yeah, he'd sit there and be making coffee going down the creek that way. But now understand, old Grouch is a master canoeist as well. He can make a canoe dance. And so I never saw him flip over. I seen him mess up a couple times. I'll tell this one on him. We used to make a run. Well, every June there was the big gathering at his land, at his place on Pigeon Creek. And we would go and camp out with the extended family and our group and etc. Well, like the week before or 2 weeks before, me and him would make a run down that creek, carrying chainsaws, axes, saws, to look, and if there was snags or if there was a tree down, we'd cut it out. So when the family got there, quite often they're canoeing with kids and stuff like that. There were no portages or nothing. You just had a clear path. So we would cut it out so that they would, make sure the current would drag it out, etc. and there was this tree down. And from everything that looked at it, it was just laying like that, bowed down like this, and the water levels flowing under it, and it was like this. And so Grouch pulled up and he got out his chainsaw and he got standing up on top of it and went to cutting like we'd done the last 5 back up here. And what he didn't realize is that one was under pressure. Because instead of it just laying there, what had happened was the tree had fallen and then the water current's going this way. It had bowed it up like that. And he didn't realize it. He thought it was just laying there. So he went to cutting. He hooked underneath the bottom and cut a wedge out and it come on the top and started cutting, and he finally hooked on the bottom, and he's standing on it expecting to cut off this end and it just fall out of the way and this is going to be okay. No. And about the time I looked up and I realized I'm watching it spread, and I hollered, "Hey!" He cut through, and so it went boing! And chainsaw went that way and he launched about 10 yards that way. Yeah, it was a Pigeon Creek catapult. It was pretty impressive. But yeah, he splashed down when he come up. I was sitting there smiling, looking at him. I said, "Don't you say a word." No, not me. Not me, brother. Not a bit. Jay's laughing interest. We will do another one. I will, if I get the chance. I'm trying everything to line it up where I can go see him again and do another video, because y'all enjoyed it so much. I know he enjoyed it, and so I want to spend some more time with him. I'd love for us to be able to go sit down by the creek at the old camping area. We got this raised fire pit we built up, and we'll build up a fire and sit there and drink coffee and talk and just let the camera run until it runs out of battery, and me and him can sit and talk. That's a fact. Why did it take so long for MARSOC to become SOCOM? I don't understand that. If you're talking about the M14 SOCOM, they couldn't make up their mind. They were coming up with all kinds of developments and everything else. And really the first SOCOM 14s were field expedient that the Marine Corps did in Desert 1. They just took the 14s and modified them, shortened them down, put the flash hiders back, and took the fiberglass stocks of Vietnam that they had issued for the 14s and modified them to have that stock on it. And it took time for them to get around to doing it, is the bottom line. They kept playing with other designs, completely different designs, until they fell back to the 14. And none of those other designs survived. They just didn't work out. What's your opinion on Winchester's caps other than Remington? Winchester caps were okay. I use CCIs a lot. But Winchesters, when I could get them locally, I couldn't get them for a long time. They seemed to be okay. The Remington was the better cap. There was an RWS cap that came out of Germany for several years that were normally really hot and more expensive. And then Dixie Gun Works marketed their own caps, which were utter garbage. And half the caps you'd pick up and look in the cup, and there wasn't any priming material in it, falling out. So Winchesters were okay. I still had preference for the Remington over it. Remington was the best cap for the price when you could get it. The CCIs, the CVAs, the Dixies were hit and miss depending on who's making them and when. So. Edgar, I wonder if people in the future be carrying 4 pistols just so they can shoot any ammo. Who knows? The question is, will we have the ammo? Somebody asked me a couple of years ago, he said, what do you see for firearms if such a cataclysm occurred? What do you think it'll be in the year, 2100? I said, either it'll be AK-47s or flintlocks. And I'm betting on flintlocks. Because the one gun that you can make the powder and make all the internal parts and make the ignition source is a flintlock, as opposed to all these others which require on complex chemistry to make the gunpowder that works in them or to make the priming compound that works. The only thing that'd work would be a flintlock. That or an AK, which if we got the ability to make ammo, AK will run just fine with black powder if you can come up with some way to make the priming compound to make the primers work in the shells, because you can't adopt it to flintlock. But that's way down yonder. Anything goes. Good evening. Tony, the 14, good evening, Tiny Titan. The 14 came out and just wasn't controllable. And so they kind of got pushed back in inventory. And in Desert One, Marines came off the landing things. About every third man had a 14. So you had, and I remember the CNN reporter leaping up to the guy, this, amphibious landing at the middle of the night. And somebody screwed up and told him it was coming. And we were going into Desert One. And they come running up and going, is the American government so bankrupt that they're sending the Marines into combat with obsolete weapons? And the officer said, no, these kill people. That's why we brought them. Because he was toting a 45 ACP 1911 and he had an M14. At that time, standard issue was the M4 and the 9mm. And these like I said, every third guy had an M14. It's because it penetrated through bunkers better and penetrated sand better. And that's what they're expecting if it was an opposed landing. So that's the reason they brought them. But the SOCOMs were the refinement of that. Well, yeah, we really want this. And a lot of those other 308 versions that they had tried, like I said, in the development, just didn't hold up. The HCAR, whatever, which is basically the BAR, modern made with modern stocks and everything, that's very similar to one that was being produced in Texas in the early 80s. In fact, the Texas National Guard was doing trials with it because it was a 308 battle rifle. The FNFAL is a better choice than the M14. I'll tell you that straight up, and I love the M14 as far as a gun to use. But neither one of them really work out when you compare what the soldiers doing, etc. The other calibers were better. But when we got into desert and we needed to be able to defeat the Russian helmets, we wanted those 14. We didn't have a designated marksman, but we had whoever was the best shooter in this squad would have a 14 because he could reach out further and he could punch through armor better and he could penetrate doors better and he could penetrate car bodies better than the standard 5.56. And that's what we wanted, because the bad guys would take windshields out of wrecked cars and stack them up and pile sand on either side and use it kind of like bulletproof. So they'd be shooting over the top of it, and any bullet that went short didn't penetrate the sand. It would get stopped by the glass. But 14 with the 308 and the penetrator rounds would. And so that was one of the things they started doing. It was field expedient versus politics. Will James, yep. And we want Bear to write the cookbook. I've had 3 people today ask me about the cookbook. And so I said, Bear is writing the cookbook. I will just co-author it, but Bear's writing the cookbook. He brought that up. He can deal with it. John Bentley, actually, you're right. That steel hatchet they've got with the wooden handle, or the fiberglass handle, I think it's wooden handle, it comes from Harbor Freight, is actually not a bad hatchet for general use. And again, for somebody starting out, it'd be a good hatchet because it's not a high dollar one. You can use it, get good use out of it, resharpen it. And if you screw up, you're not out a whole lot. But save the big money for whenever you get down the line. If it becomes your favorite tool, do it. On the other hand, if it, give a kukri a try. You'd be amazed what a kukri can do. See, Luke, just got a genuine kukri from Nepal. It's heavy as hell. It's a pack carry rather than a belt carry. Can be. Depends on the thickness. I've got, mine is about as heavy as an average hatchet, but there is a thicker one that is heavier, and I have had that big one. It basically is is a two-handed axe. So just whatever you're doing and how it fits into your kit. John Bentley, I know you may not be crazy about them, but a Fiskars by 7 is a fun feel and it's sharp. Go for it. If it works for you, that's good enough. You know, everybody has to understand that just because a tool that I love works for me in my environment may not be the best choice for you. And just because you respect my opinion and everything, don't disregard your opinion because of that. Because I had a lot of my teachers, they were telling me the U.S. Army hatchet, way to go. Don't tote anything else. Or take a double bit axe and cut it down to that long. And I've still got it. I put a full-size handle on it now. But for years, I had a double bit, American-made, full-size axe that I cut down to an 18-inch handle. And that was my chopping tool that I carried. And I carried big buoys and everything else. So my mentors, they were U.S. Army hatchet, way to go. It just didn't work for me. So find what works for you. That's the important part. Don't assume that just because Blackie says it's the most universal thing in your woods, your opinion matters. You have veto power. Take what I say, look at it, be willing to try it, have an open mind. But if it just don't fit for whatever reason, respect your own opinion. I mean, that's what I tell everybody to do. Because I've had people try to give me stuff that, Blackie, this is the greatest whatever, and you've got to have it. And it just ain't going to work with me. Doesn't mean I don't respect them, and I think what they do is great, but I had a big name, somebody that had a pretty good sized channel. And they'd come up with a knife, and they wanted to send me that knife and me use that knife and get rid of my WC knife. And I was straight up with them. I said, I'll be happy to do a review for you, but it's going to have to really impress me. Not that I could not be lured away, but it would have to be something that would really impress me. And so they sent me a knife. And yeah, I thought it was nice, good quality, etc., etc. There was a $500 knife. But then I sent it back to him. I said, with all respect, I think you've got a good product. It's just not for me. And I'm not going to promote it when I honestly can't say I'd carry it. Sorry. And they got a little bit ticked at me, but they, I gave them my honest opinion. Over time, they got over it. But it's one of those things. You just got to, use your opinion. Anything goes. FAL is not better than M14. When you're shooting full automatic, yes, it is. I had M14s, and I used to compete out to 1,000 yards. And I will tell you that an FAL is easier to hold on target than an M14 by far. Now, if you're talking about target work, slow fire, yeah, I'll take the 14. But if we're talking about a combat weapon that's going to be fully automatic, FAL is a better choice. Just because it does control better. And even then, it's not anybody's first choice. Thing dances around too much. AR-10 dances around. There's that. A lot of people think, ooh, if I have this 308 gun, I can shoot to 1,000 yards and I'll have magazines and I can go rock and roll. It don't work that way. The average deer rifle will outshoot the average assault rifle, period, because of what its job is. The average assault rifle is designed to have reliability and rapid fire. It is not designed to be a pinpoint accurate gun. In fact, the military doctrine, the M4, is a 36-inch cone of fire at 300 meters. That's the size of a hula hoop. Put all of its shots in that at 300 meters if the guy on this end knows what he's doing, or they got it locked in the vise. A standard off-the-shelf 223 bolt action has to be able to hit a Coke can at 300 yards, or you're not a varmint gun. And so it just depends on the job, when you start going into 308s and stuff, the recoil, the kick, it just becomes so hard to control it. That's one of the reasons we got away from the 14 after we had taught the rest of Europe and everybody adopted the FAL, and that was going to be standard NATO issue, and we adopted the 14, which was kind of thumbing our nose at the rest of the world. In fact, we even got H&R, H&R here in America, the shotgun company, to make up FALs for U.S. Army field trials. And so all of Europe said, that's it, we're adopting one rifle, and everybody went to it. And then the Americans went to the M14. Of course we did. It looked like the M1 Garand. And but when you're trying to shoot one rapid fire, and I've shot both quite extensively, I'll take the FAL for rapid fire over the 14. If it's slow fire at distance, the 14. Just my 2 cents. And again, your opinion may vary, and that's absolutely respectable, and I respect your opinion on what you can do with yours. Okay, K-Town, how do you store or organize your camping gear at home? That's the reason this is up here, because behind me is my storage bins, and across the top I have my packs, which are my rucksacks. My big heavy winter one that I only use in the depth of winter if we're going hiking is stored in a closet over here. And then below that there are portable tubs, and they're designed out of fire, cordage, compasses, whatever. We determined that we're going this weekend. Okay, I go through my gear. What do I need? Well, of course my haversack's going to go, and that's already got all my bases in it, right? Well, do I need a compass? Yes. Okay, open up, pull out the compass. It'll best suit what we're going to be doing this weekend. That goes in the pile. Map, I go over here and I pull out my big old book of maps. It's got all the maps within 200 miles of me. And so I pull out where we're going. So I've got a copy of the map. I got a copy of that. And then I get what canteen we're needing. Do I need more than one? Do I need to do water filtration? And I gather all my gear up. When I get my pile, everything that's going, then I pick the rucksack that'll tote that. What is the minimum rucksack that'll tote that? And that's how I fill it up, and I'm ready to go. Pick the gear, then pick the carryover. That's the way I do. Food, same way. I got a box over here that's got all my meals and stuff I'm carrying to the field. Like my dehydrated is ready to go. My stoves are all divided out, and so is all my cooking stuff. Doing a big family thing. Pull out the Coleman, pull out the stand, pull out the ice chest. It's just me, canteen cup, and a Trangia. You know, that's how I organize. When you do it long enough, it gets to where you'll just fall in place. Edgar, you need to put a muzzle brake on 308 to be good. Yeah, it needs a lot to be able to make it controllable. It's one of the reasons the military struggled for years trying to find one they could use and fully rock and roll. Now, today we're getting much better designs for it. And that H-bar, that's basically the BAR modern, it was really good. Man, that thing was designed in 30-06. It was controllable in 30-06. So drop it down to 308, it's much more controllable. So Tiny Titan, you got the Jungle Kukri. That's perfect size. Does a good job. It fits your hand. It's controllable, and yet it's got the kukri cutting ability. And so I've got one of those small Jungle Kukris up there, the small one. That was my belt kukri whenever I did the year of the kukri, where I didn't have another field knife. It had to be some form of kukri. And so I had my standard size kukri, which was my hatchet. I had a long kukri that was basically a machete or a two-handed axe, and then I had that little bitty short one. I even had the bilton, which is about like a pocket knife out of one. They call it bilton for cutting meat. They use it, they'll bite down on it. It's kind of like a chunk of jerky. They'd bite down on it and hook it up there and cut it off with their mouth and keep from cutting themselves. But I had a collection, about a dozen kukris, and I still got mine, and I still got my little Jungle Kukri because they're just so useful. Gray Wolf, whoo! Enjoy your liver and onions. Not one of my favorite things. Just never learned to eat it worth flip. Will I eat it? Yes. Do I like it? No. But I'll eat it. My dad loved, get this, rare liver. Just brown it on the outside of it and leave the middle raw. He enjoyed it like that. I never learned to like liver. Have you ever used a BPS knife? I have the Bush Lore knockoff. I'm suspicious of it, but so far it's kicking butt. I don't know about the BPS knife. I have used the Condor Bush Lore quite a bit. In fact, that was my bushcraft knife before I got my WC knives, and I still got it. It's up there. I still use it from time to time. I'm not familiar with the BPS knife, but the Bush Lores, yeah, decent. One of the reasons it thrives so much in Europe is a really good design for field work, especially when you're doing light carving and stuff. Yeah, Ryan, you got a kukri house. That's who made mine. Was a kukri house. Mine's made from the leaf spring of a Mercedes Benz. In India, Mercedes Benz is like you say Chevrolet. It's the cheap vehicle. They're expensive here because we got to import them. But in that part of the world, that's the cheap vehicle, and they go through the junkyards and pick up all the leaf springs, and that's the stock they use to make those kukris. And I've had no problem with mine. Very happy with it. Good night, Bear. Thanks for tuning in, and tell the grandbabies I said hi. Jeff Conley, bar weight a ton. That was a lot of its controllability. Absolutely. Experiments have been done with making a better flash hider to redirect gas. The problem with that is, yes, it does, but it elevates the report to the point. There was a Hakim, which was an Egyptian take on a Swedish gun that was basically a scaled up SKS in 7.6239, and its flash hider had all these little bitty holes on top of it. That was the loudest gun. I mean, I would have earplugs in and then put ear muffs on, and it would still make your ears ring. I had that gun like a week, and I took a hacksaw and cut that flash hider off the end of it. And then the report dropped down by like 2/3 to like a standard SKS going off, or like a 30-30 going off. But those tiny little angle ports just screamed when that gas went through it, and so you can take and put all kinds of redirecting and things to drop down the recoil, but at point X you also get to where you make the report go up so loud that, yeah, it's more controllable, but it leaves your ears ringing just to shoot it. And then it's not worth a flip for combat because you can't hear anybody around you, and they can't hear nothing but your gun. And then all the enemy goes, wait a minute, what was that? And starts sending love packages your way because they can hear that gun. That was the problem with the M60 in Vietnam. As soon as it opened up, you became the target. Everybody knew, get the 60. Oh, cool. K-Town, that some of those cod stews. Up in New England and all, I know that's real popular. I have eaten some of that stuff where I would be traveling up in that neck of the woods, and it's okay. Coming from a background of eating a lot of fish and stuff, I'm not as big a fan of fish as I was when I was young, but some of it can be quite good. Like real clam chowder and stuff can be really, really good. The stuff you buy at the store, not so much, but somebody that really knows how to cook, yeah, it can be really good stuff. But then again, my grandmother could cook chitlins, and they were good, and people just wrinkle their nose up. You never had my grandmama's chitlins. You have a bowl of that, you won't ever complain about chitlins again. Edgar, I saw a video where 8mm AP ammo from World War II goes through modern level 4 ceramic. Yeah, it had that kind of core to it. They would penetrate. Oh, cool. Anything goes. I had one of those that took, they didn't make those for very long, those paratroopers that took the AK mags. I had one, and I traded it off to a gentleman, but they're great hunting rifles. The power is equal to 30-30. And if you put good hollow points in, it makes a decent deer rifle for up close, reasonable ranges. And when you could buy, I'm not making this up, back in the late 80s to early 90s, you could buy brand new SKSs that were coming out of the former Soviet Union in the early 90s. It must have been because they broke up in 90. So by 92, 93, SKSs were rolling in, and it was $65 for an SKS, and in Cosmoline, coming out of these European nations, out of Germany or whatever. And I helped convert a lot of them into deer hunting rifles, put little scopes on them and stuff for 0 to 150 yards. And they made good hunting rifles for deer, especially foul weather. Oh yeah, the 8mm with the 22 training barrel. I know what you're talking about. Great training guns. Wildtech's good. 6.5 can be very effective as long as you know how to shoot. It can be a very effective caliber. Daryl Tripe Soup. Okay. Back when I was a district manager and we'd have the company party, Christmas party, I would cook tripe, but you cut it into small squares, about that big. And I would fry up just baskets of tripe. And then I would take and I put like 20 or 30 different kinds of dipping sauces, everything from burn you to the core hot to super mild and creamy ranch stuff. And it was I'd just sit bowls out there and it was dipping sauces. And they loved it. And then somebody said, "What is this?" I said, "It's beef." And so I've never seen it. The ladies standing next to him slapped him in the arm and said, "Shut up. It's good. I don't want to know, but it's good. So just shut up." And so we had a good laugh about that. But as long as tripe's in small pieces, it's very good. But if it's big, them grains go in different directions. Hard to chew. That makes me want to make tripe now. We'll see. Katon, yeah, if you got the biology, you've got the enzymes and stuff in your tummy to eat it, you just break it down and eat it, rare steaks and etc. I'm the other way. If you overcook meat, like super, super cook, I mean, it's super, super well done. That's hard on my tummy, where you're about bloody raw. I can eat it and it didn't give me any trouble. But overcooked meat's one that always gives me indigestion. What's your generation's cheapest surplus rifle? Carcanos. I can remember going into pawn shops when I was a small boy, and they'd have a wooden barrel of Carcanos, and they were $25 a piece, and they had ammo. So they ended up being a lot of first deer guns. 303 Brits were probably the second choice, and then Mausers. And the 03s and stuff, those were premium. I've had 303 A3 Springfields and loved them. But in fact, my first long range target rifle was an 03 A3. Blackie, what is your opinion on finding a good, accurate pellet rifle? Do you prefer the bend in half or the pump style? I prefer the bend in half, because you get a lot more leverage to cock that big spring, and you usually have much higher performance out of it. And so I would recommend a 22 caliber, because the pellet rifles that do somewhere around 1,000 feet per second, the 22 short ammunition for a standard 22 long rifle out of a rifle is about 750 feet per second. And you can rabbit and squirrel hunt with that at close range. Now you drop a pellet gun that's taking the same size and weight pellet, but it's moving 1,000 feet per second. You're in 22 long, not long rifle, but 22 long category, and just underneath 22 long rifle. So anything you can do with a 22, you can do with that up close, and be more than enough for taking small game and stuff like that up close. And especially whenever you can get a 10 of ammo for 500 rounds or something, like $10, that's cheap. It doesn't make a lot of noise. And I have heard of, although I have not seen any for sale lately, I have heard of the molds that you could buy to make pellets. Just like you do a mini ball. You close and you stick a chunk in and lock it, and it top poured, and then you unhook the base and you open, and that makes a hollow cavity. And so this comes into the mold, and that's what you're pouring over to make the hollow base. And the two halves of the mold that come together around it form the rest of the body, and you top pour into it. So I knew a guy that was big into air guns back in the 90s. I mean, seriously into it. And he had his own molds for making 22 caliber pellets. And so then all you got is just air. Oil it up, use it. It'll last for years and years and years. No ammunition needed. Feel good. Just got cracklings for the first time, and a whole lifelong farmer this year. Yeah, cracklings. The favorite thing I could get when I was little was the pigtail. Cracklings, of course, where they'd make pig skin. But the tail, frying that tail and get old curly cube, you only get one per pig. And so we'd be butchering the pig, and us kids would argue over who was going to get it as a treat to get to sit there. It was like a big pork skin sitting there and cracking on it. So. Yeah, Daryl, smoked beef tongue. Yeah, oxtail is forgotten. Cut up tail soup. We used to just call it tail soup. But now sometimes at some markets you'll find oxtail, and it's just where they cut up the tail. Tongue makes a good meat. Heart. When times are tough, you'll be amazed what you can cook. Pig's feet. I ate a lot of pig's feet. That was my mama's favorite snack, with pickled pig feet. I never got to liking pickled pig's feet. Pickled eggs was okay, but she liked that. I can remember cooking chicken feet before, them boiling chicken feet and giving us kids for like a snack to their gnawing, because the meat would get tender. And then I forget the name of I think Wolfgang Puck, when he started doing his restaurant, and he was on the menu was stewed chicken feet. And so they'd bring you a plate that had these stewed chicken feet and other kind of stuff, and people going, ew, that's just an old Southern delicacy. That was something that we'd do because you're selling the bird. Well, what can I keep and eat? Anything goes. I hear you. The old Daisy Benjamin punts were nice guns, and could be set up to be very accurate. Hello, Blackie. I heard that aluminum caps from cap makers, such as the ones from 22 loader, long rifle loader, don't jam up on Colt percussion revolvers. Do you have any experience with them? Best regards. I do not, but I do know several people that have got their own Tappa cap sets and these things, making their own, and they seem to work well. Now, the jamming is like I talked about in my videos on the face of the hammer. There's a couple of little, that slot on a Colt, there's teeth like where that slot's cut. Deburr that, and a lot of your stuff goes down. It's because when you fire, it's pushing the cap fragments back up in there, and they're catching. So when you go to pull the hammer, it's pulling the cap off and dropping it down in the action. The aluminum stretches more, and so it doesn't deform as much. So it may be an improvement, but I haven't had a chance to play with it myself, so I can't speak to it other than I have friends that have utilized it, and they said it worked well for them. I plan on getting a Tappa cap and trying it out, if nothing else, to give you guys a fair and honest review. So I will, with hope, down the line, be able to do that. Justin Coon, am I the only one that eats fried catfish tails? Dude, you got to fight my wife for it, because fish tails is something she'll eat. Ham hock soup, absolutely. liver and onions, only if I'm real hungry. Oxtail. Yeah, I mean, it's the tail. Why would I want to pay so much money for the tail? You know. Thank you for your Gobra. Thank you for your answer, Blackie. Have you found a good air pressure handgun? Do they compare to black powder handguns? Black powder handguns are more powerful until you get to the real professional type hunting modern handgun, and then they're comparable. In fact, air guns and black powder guns were comparable in power up to the mid 1700s. The only thing that kept air guns from really just taking off. I understand that China fielded in the 1700s a 50 caliber rifle that could kill a man at 500 yards. It was an air rifle, but what hurt air rifles is they were such precision weapons and they were slow to recharge them cylinders. Lewis and Clark carried one. And it was just the cost was just what kept them from becoming, that. But today with modern abilities, air guns could be very viable for a survival gun. Mike Simmons, that Gammo Whisper is a decent one. Edgar, head cheese. We call it souse down here at the South. And I didn't get any this fall. Usually in the falls when they start showing up in the local market, and I told Hope I was kind of craving a souse sandwich because I'll take and put it on toast or I'll take it and fry an egg, and when it's just about done, I'll put a piece of souse on top of it. It's kind of like sausage. In fact, I got to make that for Dan Lutz. We had gone to Georgia a couple of years ago and was up in January, and we were up in North Georgia at the Fuel the Fire class thing. We'd gone up there to kind of help out. And I went and cracked 2 eggs in a pan, and then I put 2 slabs of sauce on it and stirred it all up, made kind of like an omelet to make a sandwich. And he's sitting there, can you make 2 of them? Yeah. So I slapped it on the thing and handed it to him. And before I got the second one done, he done inhaled that one. And he said, what is this? We call it souse. Well, it's kind of familiar. You Yankees call it scrapple. Oh, yeah, I know scrapple. Scrapple is kind of like souse. So up north, just look for scrapple. Same basic idea. It's just like polenta. It's grits, cheese grits. But the Italians call it polenta. And if you go look in a lot of your places, you'll find it in these little tubes already made up. It's cheese grits. But in the South, we call it grits. Okay, Larry, you got my attention. Blackie, I posted this question several times, but I guess you never see it. Would like to know how your trigger thong is put in your holster. I've noticed there's a hole in the holster. Okay. What it's doing is it's actually, there's a slot and it comes through and it's sewed from the back of the holster into that. So you ain't got a plug on the inside. All it is it's a thong coming through and then it's sewed through into. So from the inside of the holster, it's smooth with it coming out of that slot. So it goes around and snaps. But that's why it, instead of sewing it on the inside, it's sewed on the outside and it goes through that opening. I hope that answers your question. Can I do a video on how to add a thong? Yes, to a holster, I can do that. And I will add that to the list, a safety thong, because a lot of times I just use just a twisted piece onto one to make it happen. Hold on, I'll add that to the list right now. Add safety thong to holster. Okay, I will see what I can do for you. What is the singular of grits? Grit. 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 What are grits? When you look at a dried piece of corn, like hard corn, on the very end, there's this end that actually connects to the cob, the opposite end, the round thing that when you're looking at the whole kernel of corn that you're seeing, there's like a white piece on the very end of it. That's the grit. When they grind it, it comes off as a hard piece, and that's the teeny tiny pieces of it. So it's the very end cap of the corn, and it's called grits. Justin, is grits hominy? No, hominy is a whole kernel of corn that's been soaked in lye, and it swells up. So that's hominy. I know it sounds deadly, doesn't it? You're going to soak it in something that's deadly poison, but people did it in the past. Hominy was a lot of time feed corn that you're going to feed the animals and you were that hungry. They would soak it in lye, and it would make them hydrate and puff up big and get soft. And then they'd boil it and eat it. But you can go to the store and buy hominy. Same thing. Scott Lynn, Limburger cheese. I've eaten it. Never developed a taste for it. And the girlfriend wouldn't kiss me afterwards either. But Captain Crunch, I'm Southern and I hate grits. Understand, I'm Southern and I don't drink coffee that much. I know, shocking. But I just don't, and I don't like beer. So, hey, we're all individuals. Washburn Billy, thank you. Yeah, John Bentley, I love kukris, but it has no problem cutting off a finger if you're not careful. Absolutely. There is no minor wound from a kukri. It is amazing how much damage it can do in one hit. Even a glancing blow. Wild Tex, Umarex, decent guns. The 22 PCP rifle comes with a hand pump, decent price. Yeah, a lot of them you can get at a fairly decent price. Good evening, Jonathan. Glad you made it. It's just how much, what kind of range and what you're doing. The cheaper guns work just fine out to 25, 20 yards, something like that. If you're trying to get longer, actually, then those big money really do come into play. But for the average person just starting out, I tell them to spend about $100, $150, get a decent name one, and start practicing in your backyard. And once you get to where you learn what you're doing with it, then you can invest in those high dollar $300,000 and $400,000 and $500,000 ones if you want to do that. But start out with cheap ones. Prove to yourself that you're going to do this. Dan Davis, I can see that about the head cheese made for the jowl meat and stuff like that. Real fatty. And it's kind of a sausage cake. Yeah. Scott Lynn, this guy better than having a Webster dictionary. Cool. Okay, as long as we're going back and forth about grits, what do you do with leftover grits? Well, once you're done with breakfast and you got that half a pot of leftover grits that nobody ate, you set it up on the stove off the heat and you put a plate upside down over it and you let it cool down all the way. And then after lunch, about an hour before dinner, you took it and scooped it into a 12 square baking pan, shallow square baking pan. You put a little bit of butter rub in the bottom of it. You fill it full of the grits and you press it down. It'll be dried out by now, and you make it kind of like a Rice Krispie cake. You push the grits down, okay? When you get them all the way down, you crumble up leftover bacon on the top of it. You put a piece of cheese and you slide it in the oven at 350 for about 25 minutes and you bake it. And then you cut it like a brownie and take it out. That's baked grits. And it's made with the leftover grits. And that's really good too. I know you people ain't Southern enough to ever have baked grits. Well, that's when you got leftover grits, what you do with them. But it's good. Justin, Blackie, how's the weather looking for the gathering? Too early. Right now, we're going to have a cold snap come in next week that will be clearing out. So here's roughly where I'm going to step out and say I'm expecting the daytime highs to be in the 80s, high 70s or 80s. The nighttime lows should be in the 50s or very high 40s. I'm expecting mid to upper 50s. Okay. Toward the end of our gathering, the question is that cold going to circle back around because it's polar vortex orbiting the planet? So it's coming in the week before. It will be clearing out by Monday or Tuesday. We're coming in on Wednesday. That means it's about 3/4 of the way around. By Saturday, will it come back and the temperatures drop? Or will it go north of us and us be nice, warm, clear weather? That's the question. If it drops down, we're going to have cool weather and rain. If it goes up, we'll have nice, warm. Right now, I'm betting on nice, warm. But that's just my guess at the moment. So look, baked grits and bacon grease. Yes. Add a little bit of cheese on top or something like that. Yeah. We didn't throw food away. We found another use for them. When I was growing up, the rule was anything left over, any leftovers at the end of the meal, went in the refrigerator. Saturday night, that's what was for dinner. Cleaned it all out, put it in one pot. So if it was leftover peas and corn and rutabagas and whatever, that went into one pot, add enough water, stirred up, and that was thick soup. So if you didn't like something, you better eat up. You're going to see it again this week. So if you don't like it, you better eat doubles. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with it on Saturday night. So, but we didn't throw it away. We found another way to redo it. Scott Lynn, what's your favorite rifle and pistol that you currently have? My favorite rifle that I currently have is my Henry, which is a Uberti made Henry it's in 4440 and was imported in the United States in the late 1970s. And I have a 3-digit serial number in the 300 range. It's one of the first run that was ever imported in the U.S. That's how long I've had it. And that's my favorite rifle to be able to hunt and do just about everything with. And if you had to put my feet to fire and say one gun, it'd be a 22. But if it had to be a center fire, it'd be my Henry because I got so much experience with it. And favorite pistol I currently own? That's going to be tough. Favorite pistol would probably it's going to be one of my black powders. And it's probably going to be my 1861 Navy Stormborn. She's so accurate, so reliable, such a joy to shoot. I love my 44s. I love Shiloh, but that gun is just it makes me look good, and so that would be one that I would probably pick as my first choice. If I had to keep just one, that would be it. Jonathan Frisbee, I've been through very bad weather and very good weather at the gathering. We laughed through all of it. Yep, we did. In fact, I was talking to Bear today about getting firewood delivered out there. So I'm trying to have a cord of firewood delivered on Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. So we'll have plenty of firewood. So if it turns cool, we'll just build up a bigger fire. Lewis Ward, hominy is made with a special hominy white corn, a flour corn, not field corn. Used to grow it. Cool. I always just knew it. My daddy liked hominy. I never did because it had that crunchy core to it. So, but we ate hominy, but my grandmother them made hominy, and they talked about using hardwood ashes to get lye to soak it in back when she was a girl. So it was not one of those things that was terribly favored on my list. You know what I mean? Gary, how are you? I'm doing well, thank you. Channel, what do you think about firing shot and percussion revolvers? I've done it for years. The 44s are far better than the 36s. The 36s will work, but they just a bigger capacity in the 44. And I've demonstrated on film, I believe. I know I have. Shooting shot, I have an 1860 or my 58 Remington, using it for snake load. And usually during this early summer when the snakes are crawling a lot up here, and they're hunting mates and they're aggressive and they're kind of ticked off at the world and they're coming out of their, being lazy and they're trying to breed, you see them. And no snake is going to give you a lot of trouble. They'll just wait for you to go around them. But at the same time, when you look down, there's one right there, me carrying Captain Ball. Usually my first 2 charges are going to be a shot load. And then my next 3 will be solids. I can easily just thumb spin to a solid if I need one for a distance shot. But if it's usually going to be right here on me, it's going to be those first 2 are going to be shot. And usually with the 44, one shot at 10 feet or less takes all the fight out of them. They just go limp and it's over. I don't want to have to hurt anything unless it's me or them. Sorry to be you, Chuck Miller, thank you. Bringing some firewood with you anyway. Thank you very much. See, Luke. Okay. Edgar, correct. Air guns and black powder, big bores, etc. More hit because bigger projectile, moving it relatively minor, but not minor, but less velocity. It's doing the job of weight, where modern guns and stuff, they want to do the job of velocity, taking the place of weight. Like I did in one of my videos, I was talking about that you've got a motorcycle and an 18-wheeler. They both hit this brick wall at 25 miles an hour. Which one's going to make a bigger hole? Well, the 18-wheeler, because the mass, Can the motorcycle make that same size hole? Yes, but it's got to go a lot faster. If it hits the wall at 75, it can make a hole that big. But the 18-wheeler can do it at 25. It's just size, mass, motion. I can get the same size wounding, but I got to go a lot faster. And that's where a lot of the modern guns, it's speed, trying to take up the place of being a big, heavy bullet. K-Town, have I heard of a Kelly kettle? Yes, I have. And not long ago, somebody contacted me, wanted me to do a review on one. And I don't know. I'm a little bit, I don't know. I think they're a great idea. And I've seen them. It used to be an old carpenter's kettle in Germany and most of Europe, where they would take the wood shavings and stuff and sit there and boil, water for tea or coffee. And they seem to be a very good idea. And I know a lot of people have used them. I've just never had one. Ryan Walker, you like whiskey? Of course. I am not a power drinker, and my drinking days were when I was younger. That being said, I've got a fifth of 25. Well, it was 18-year-old Scotch whenever I got it, and I've had the bottle many years. And I've got a fifth I've been working on for 2.5 years. So I'm not what you call a power drinker, but I do like whiskey. And I like good, strong, full-bodied spirits. I grew up on White Lightning. And so I don't drink to excess, but a lot of times the weather's got you bad and you just hurt. I can take a shot glass of that and go to bed and be able to go to sleep. It's medicinal in my case. See, Luke, Blackie, what's your best idea of a man gift today? Man's gift. That's going to depend a lot on the individual, because if you're asking about a gift to give a guy, knowledge is always the best. So a book a program, a class, or something on a topic that they're interested in. Something like that. So if they're into fishing, find out what kind of fishing reel they want. As far as bushcraft stuff, woodcraft stuff, knives, camping gear, whatever. That's one of them topics that's hard to narrow that down because it's going to be on the individual. You know, I've had people give me beautiful cufflinks. I don't wear a lot of cufflinks. I've got a real nice set though. I've got a very expensive suit from whenever back in my days when I was a district manager that still fits. If I'm going to a funeral or a wedding, I'll wear my suit. But yeah, that suit's 25 years old, but it was a really good suit back then. It's still a really good suit. And I got cufflinks. But, you know, it depends on the person and what they need. Sorry to cop out that way, but just being honest with you. Jay's live. I had to step away. Are you going to do any more videos on black powder rifles? Yes, I do plan on doing that. And I shot the second part of the shotgun video, and I keep putting it off because I've got 2 more scenes I want to go shoot with it and put out. And me and Bear are going to do a setting them up for turkey hunting. Turkey hunting's about to start in Alabama. So after my gathering, me and Bear is going to do a turkey hunt. And I'm going to be using that Thompson Center shotgun. He's going to be using that. But yes, I will be doing more on the rifles. I've still got to do my flintlock. I've had a lot of people say they want to see my flintlock rifle and talk about it. So yes, I will be. I ran low on lead and I was doing casting, and everything just started stacking up. And I had so much happen at one time. I just had to back away from it for a little bit, but I will do more. Oh yeah, Edgar, 18-year-old Scotch makes real good. Um, good Scotch. Drink the good stuff. It doesn't have to be hundreds of dollars, but just decent Scotch makes a really good man's gift. If they enjoy such things, and I do. Alex Miller, are you going to show some support for Duelist Inn? I absolutely would like to. I've sent Mike Bellevue personal. We're friends on Facebook, and I've sent him regards and stuff like that. That I think he's fighting a tough job, and I hope he wins. And for those of you that don't know, let me point this out. Mike Bellevue, who does Duelist, and I don't remember the name right off the top of my head. It's like Duelist, not Duelist. I think it's Duelist 1957, something like that. But that's his channel, and he just go look on YouTube and look up Mike Bellevue or look up anything on percussion revolvers. If my picture don't show up, it's probably going to be Mike, which is a big guy. And very handsome little mustache and goatee on him. And he usually wears historic costumes, and he does a lot of stuff. And he's owned this land for several years and using it as a private for him to go shoot his videos, shooting videos, shooting guns. And a local ne'er-do-well up there in Pennsylvania has decided that he's going to shut him down because he's violating all these rules, which he really isn't. The rules that he's trying to stress are actually for a public shooting range where you have to have all the berms, and this is just somebody's backyard where it's safe to shoot. You got a big, huge hill right here, and all the neighbors around him shoot and hunt as well. And they say, "Oh, you can hunt here, but you can't shoot," and it's a political motivated thing. And so he set up a fund where you can send him a little bit of money because he's had to get a lawyer and he's trying to fight for it. And anybody that felt in their hearts, I'd recommend you do help him out if you can. I'm helping him out, and I would hope that you would help him out too. Jay's life, I've exhausted my sources of lead and wheel weights, roof flashing, some plumbing sources. Any other sources of lead? Duelist 1954, Mike Bellevue channel, Sleepy Keep. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Look for salvage yards. look up in your phone book or in whatever, look at salvage yard, or where can I sell junk metal, recycler, and quite often they'll have a pile of lead, and you can get it from them at a decent price. We used to have a place down here in Dothan that was an industrial place, and you walk in and man, they'd be whatever. I'd go down there and find cast iron skillets because they're being sold as scrap. And it was coming out of a plumber that had cleaned out an old building, and it was about a pickup truck load of 6-inch diameter lead pipe, the seal that went between big old pipes back in the 20s and 30s, like sewer pipes. These, however, had been, of course, blowed out and cleaned out, but it was just hunks of lead laying there, and I picked it up for, I think it was $1 a pound. And so I was getting 30, 40, 50 pounds of lead. So that makes quite a few bullets. But I need to I'm running low as well. And I've got to get out there and start looking and find some more. I think I'm down to my last 10 pounds. So I'm going to go start looking, see if I can find some more sources. K-Town, 6% beer tax in Canada. Yeah, that's going to tick people off. Let's see. Whoop, we done went 2 hours. You guys done got me in deep. All right. I guess we've done 2 hours, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Coming up next week, I will be on. And then the week after, I will not be on because that's when I'll be at my gathering. So next week, I will be having another Q&A session on Thursday night, and I hope you'll tune in. Guys, thank you very much for the conversation and the questions. I really do appreciate it. And to everybody that tuned in, thank you very much. And I hope you have a great weekend. Till next time, guys, I'm wishing you safe journeys and have a great weekend. Good night.